Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'll be doing my second Let's Test for this channel. I will be testing out graphite pencils in the Ohuhu Sketchbook. The Ohuhu Sketchbook is a marker sketchbook. In other words, it's specifically designed for markers, but it also does advertise itself as being good with dry mediums. That includes pencils and charcoal, pastels, stuff like that. The pencils I used in this artwork were the Derwent graphic pencils, the faber-castell Castell 9000 pencils, and the Staedtler Mars Lumograph black pencils. The Mars Lumograph black pencils in particular have a very different quality to normal graphite pencils. Specifically, they have carbon in them, so they don't have that graphite shine, and it also means that they apply in a different way. Specifically, they feel a little bit rougher when I'm using them on paper. Let's move on to my opinions on how these graphite pencils worked in the Ohuhu Sketchbook. First of all, I need to mention the paper inside the sketchbook. Unlike typical bleed-proof paper, this one doesn't have a completely smooth surface. It has the slightest tooth to it, and this is why it can take dry mediums as well as markers. In my last video, Let's Test number 1, when I tested out markers inside the bleed-proof paper, I mentioned that the blending ability of the paper is somewhere in between a fully bleed-proof paper, which has virtually no blending ability, and also printing paper, which has a lot of feathering and therefore a lot of blending ability. This slight tooth that the paper has, and also the slightly different texture in that it isn't completely smooth, is, I think, what makes this paper somewhere in the middle of these two extremes. And it's what allows dry mediums to be applied very well, actually, in this sketchbook. Let's talk about the way the pencil's applied now. When it comes to graphite pencils, there's really two methods of shading. The first one is to use a blending stump or your finger or a cotton bud or anything that you think will work to blend out that pencil. In my case, I used a paper stump. I can't remember what brand it is. I think it might have just been a No brand that I got from Amazon. And as I expected from this paper type, it blended out beautifully. So if you are an artist that really enjoys building graphite pencil artwork with this blending method, I think you'll have a perfectly fine time using this paper. And considering how thick it is, I think you could use this paper for final pieces as well. That's just my personal view. Which is why it's a good thing the Ohuhu Sketchbook also comes in an A4 size. For the second method of blending, this is what I call fine line toning. That's not the actual term, it's just what I call it because it makes sense to me. This type of toning is when you build up the layers and the values using very fine lines, hence the name. With this method, I found that the more layers you apply on top, the less the paper is able to take, and that's exactly what I expected, given that this paper doesn't have as much tooth as paper specifically geared towards graphite pencils. So these types of paper include cartridge paper. Sketchbooks that work really well with graphite pencils include the Sea White sketchbook, and the paper that I currently use for final pieces, the Stonehenge paper, also has that texture, that tooth that graphite pencils work very well with. This doesn't mean this paper isn't good for this particular method, it just means that you really need to know exactly which values you want to apply down before you even begin the piece. Because if you complete a couple of layers of graphite pencil on this paper and then you decide you want to add in darker values, that's going to be harder to layer on top once you get to about the 2 to 3 layer limit. With the exception of not being able to build up as many layers on this paper as you would with paper specifically geared towards graphite pencils, I think this paper is fantastic for graphite pencils, even with the fine line toning technique. Just make sure you know exactly where you want to add in your darkest values and your lightest values, and you should be able to create the end result that you are looking for without having to apply above 3 layers. Those are my views so far on how I think graphite pencils apply in this sketchbook. Again, so far I'm loving this sketchbook and I do hope that I continue to love it. If you guys have bought this sketchbook, let me know in the comments below what you think of it, because I would love to read and reply to your comments. That's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching and I will see you next time. Oh geez, my voice keeps breaking.